We don't have any word that she's not coming.
No.
Okay,
Is
I'm sure she'll be here.
is Westborough TV ready? Thank you.
Great. All right. Good evening and welcome to the May 25th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. As usual, we will have to read the governor's order into the record. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order, imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. Any person interested or wishing to participate in the public comment portions of this hearing from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device, please click this URL to join. And there's a long Zoom URL that I will not read. And then enter the meeting ID. At the time noted, no in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting can be viewed on Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191 or live streamed online at westboroughtv.org. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post the meeting on the Town of Westborough's website. We will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, we have 5 items on the agenda. Sorry, we have a discussion of the preliminary residential subdivision plan for Ruggle Trails, 228 Ruggle Street. We have a continued public hearing on the site plan review application for 4400 Computer Drive, a continued public hearing for site plan review application for 1400 West Park Drive, discussion and possible approval for site plan review requirements relative to outdoor seating for restaurants, and a master plan update. And we will start with the Ruggle Trails subdivision. We have a draft decision from Jim Robbins, and I will turn that over to Jim to take us through that, and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to comment and the board to comment. Jim, go ahead if you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as you know, we've been discussing for many months now the Ruggle Trails preliminary subdivision proposal. It's a conventional subdivision with only 3 conventional lots. That's lots that are at least 50,000 square feet with the minimum of 200 feet of frontage. The property is located at 228 Ruggle Street. You have in front of you a draft approval for this project dated May 25th, 2021. That's today. The applicant did request one waiver. If you're so inclined to act on this evening, I'd ask that you vote the waiver first and then vote the approval decision. I will note that we made one correction today based on the plan revision dates. The plans will be revised and submitted to us tomorrow, but the decision as presented to you tonight, with the exception of adding one date, which was April 9th, 2021, that was the last revision date. We added that in today. Other than that, there are no other revisions. I would just ask that the applicant's representative, Karen Keegan, state for the record that she's reviewed the proposed approval, and if she has any comments, please to do so.
Hi, Karen Keegan here from GBI. I have reviewed the decision. The waiver is acceptable, and I am accepting of this particular written decision.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? You've all had a chance to read this. Any changes? Okay. All right, it is not a public hearing, so we can move to a decision. Does anybody want to make a motion? I think we're going to motion on the waiver first.
Let's see, I didn't see a motion out for the waiver.
Okay, well, I'll motion to grant the waiver from the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Westborough, Massachusetts, to allow the construction of a 24-foot wide roadway pavement rather than 26-foot width required for the 228 Ruggle Street Rugged Trail subdivision.
Second that, Mark.
Okay, Jim, is that cover everything on the
Yes.
waiver?
Please reference the section of the regulations as you see it on the screen.
Okay. I'm sorry. So a waiver from section 4B1B, roadway pavement width. I'll take that amendment as a clarification rather than a change. Okay.
Shouldn't you also, or Jim, just add the rest of this language that it will not generate a large amount of traffic because of the cul-de-sac, just so that that's in the written record as to why, on the basis of which we're granting the waiver.
Sure. So if I could just request that Kristen bring up the decision, and Kristen, go to the last page before the signature page. And the waiver is fully written and explained there. It's the next to last.
Okay. So you want Hazel, you want the motion to include the rationale for granting it as well,
Yes.
even though that's written in the decision?
Yeah, I
Okay,
do.
so,
Because it's a separate thing, and I think you want to make sure if there's any ever question, that it's in the waiver itself and why we've approved that waiver.
So then if you would
Okay, well,
just.
let me
printed.
let me rephrase the motion then. Okay, I'll make a motion to grant the waiver from the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Westborough, Massachusetts, as amended through November 28th, 2000, section 4B1B roadway pavement width to allow the construction of a 24-foot wide roadway pavement rather than the 26-foot width required. The proposed subdivision roadway and cul-de-sac is less than the maximum allowed 600 feet in length and will not generate significant traffic. The narrower width roadway will create less impervious surface than the required pavement width and create greater groundwater infiltration on the project site. Public safety shall not be compromised by the granting of this waiver. We have a
Second
second.
that, Mark.
Okay, I heard Hazel first, so we'll call that motioned and seconded. Any further discussion of that waiver motion? Okay, so all those in favor, we'll do a roll call. Hazel Nurse?
Yeah, yes to approve.
Okay, Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
Tim Kaler?
Yes to approve, Mark.
Okay, Peter Bouchard?
Jim, do you want me to vote on this one?
Yes, you can
It's
vote
not-
on it. Yes.
It's not a public hearing, so you should.
Okay. I'm getting used to it. Yes, yes to,
It's better to check before, yeah, I
Of
agree.
course.
All right, so, and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 in favor of granting the waiver. Now we turn back to the decision, and does anybody care to make a motion on the decision? I think we had a draft motion prepared. If
Sorry,
somebody has that up.
I will, Mark. I move that the board approve the preliminary plan for Rugged Trails residential subdivision as stated in the decision dated May 25th, 2021, with revisions noted by the board.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of that motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote again. All those in favor of the motion to approve this decision, please, all those in favor, we'll go start with Jim Ball.
Yes, Mark.
Okay, Hazel.
Yes to approve.
Okay, Tim Kaler,
Yes to approve, Mark.
Peter Bouchard.
yes, Mark.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 in favor of approving the decision. Karen, we'll see you again when you're back before us for the definitive plan, right?
I thank you very much for all your time. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Karen.
All right, next item on the agenda was a continued public hearing for the site plan review application at 4400 Computer Drive. Kristen, do you have the letter from the applicant, or do we need to bring that up? I can just read it into the record if, oh, you have it, great. We got a request from
Yeah.
the applicant to extend, to continue this to next week's meeting. You should have all received that. I think Kristen's going to bring it up. Just, Jim, do I need to read this whole thing into the record?
I think it would be good because it's a formal request and the applicant is not here.
Sounds good. All right, we have a letter dated May 20th, 2021 from Bob Buckley, representing the applicant, addressed the Westborough Planning Board. Please be advised that this office and undersigned represent the applicant Atlantic Management Corporation in connection with the redevelopment of the property located at 4400 Computer Drive. We recently received Teague and Bond's peer review letter dated May 17th, 2021. In the interest of using the planning board's time most productively, the applicant respectfully requests the board to continue this matter without testimony from its May 25th meeting to the next scheduled hearing date of June 1st, 2021. This extension will enable the applicant to provide a response to the peer review. Additionally, if any members of the board, town officials, or the public would like to schedule a time with the applicant to do a site walk, please let us know, and this can be accomplished during the interim period as well. I'd like to address the extension first, and then we can discuss the site walk. Does anybody have any questions or objection to continuing this to June 1st?
No.
Okay. I will make a motion then to continue the public hearing for site view application at 44 Computer Drive to June 1st, 2021 at 6:30.
I second that, Mark.
Okay. I'm not sure who got in there first, but we'll give it to Tim. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Peter Bouchard.
Yes.
Okay. Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Jim Ball,
Yes.
Hazel Nurse,
Yes to approve.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to approve this continuance. And then we just needed to discuss a site walk that was proposed by the applicant and discussed a little bit at last meeting. Jim, do you want to take us through the details of that? And do you have any dates in mind for this, Jim Robbins?
I do not have any dates in mind. With the purpose of the site walk would be to allow the planning board to see the site and view its location in regard to the residential abutters for both sight and sound. I've asked the applicant if they would provide a mock-up of the wall for both sound and sight, and that would simply be a very small cross-section of a wall, not the material that they would use naturally and not secured to the ground permanently, but something that would be probably a wooden mock-up so that you could get a sense of the height of a visual and sound barrier. I would suggest that you do this in the evening so residents can attend, because you're going to have to post this hearing. Yeah, or I'm sorry, you're going to have to post this site walk because there's a quorum of the board.
Yeah. Jim, do you know if they want to do this before the next meeting?
They would have liked to, but you're stuck with the posting requirements. If I posted tomorrow morning, the earliest you could do it was Friday.
Yeah. I don't think a Friday before Memorial Day is a good day to do a site walk. We want to give people a chance to attend because it is for the public as well. But does anybody have a date in mind for next week, or, obviously not the 1st since we're meeting? And if we're looking at the evenings,
Wednesday, sorry, I coach soccer and baseball, so Wednesday's a good day for me if that works for everyone else. Not to interrupt.
So Wednesday, the 2nd, I can make that.
I can't make the 2nd, but if you get a quorum without me, that's fine too.
Well, I don't think Jim Ball is back on the 2nd. Jim Ball, are you back yet?
Sorry, Mark, I was still muted. Yes, I am. I will be back, so I can make that date. I'm coming back
Okay.
Friday.
Hazel, can you make the 2nd?
Yeah,
Okay. I can make the 2nd as well. Tim, I think that would be your only meeting that you could miss on this. So I just want to.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe we
depending
should-
on the time I could do it early, I have dinner plans that night, so with people from out of town, so.
Right. Do you have a time that works that?
I mean, can we do it as early as 5?
Yeah, I'd like to give people a chance to get home. I'm not sure how many people are commuting.
when do you think they'll have the mock-up ready? I mean, there's obviously no point in doing it until after they have the mock-up ready, and at this point, I wonder when that will be. And you know, the thing is that, quite frankly, one of the most important things is the headlights, which they're complaining about. And so, you know, the question is, do you kind of want to do it a little later? It's awfully light at that time, and it won't give us any idea of what the effect of headlights is on the neighborhood. That, more than anything else, I think, is what their main complaint is.
Yeah, I don't know that we're really going to get the full brunt of that impact till, after 9 o'clock. So I
Right.
don't know that we're going to have a meeting that late, but I definitely take your point on that, Hazel, that maybe we wait for the sun to get a little closer to sunset.
Mark, if we see
All right,
the area, can each of us drive up after the fact, and just then we'll know where we're going and we'll know where this is as a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind doing it on the 2nd. I just worry, Jim Robbins, how many, you're allowed to miss one meeting and sign a Mullen waiver?
Correct.
Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I would say just, Mark, a comment, not just because I can't make the meeting, but I would reinforce what Hazel is saying. I made mention of it last time. Unless I've been to the site several times, unless there's something specific to see that the applicant has mocked up, again, and that would test the sight lines and so forth, then that's what the butters are going to be interested in. I don't know what the value is of the applicant kind of pointing into the sky or, just walking us around the site. I've seen the site. I'm waiting to see what their mitigation measures are and get some initial validation that those will work, and then put conditions in such that soon after they're installed, they're tested under those conditions.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? And Jim Robbins, can we run this by the applicant rather than have the whole board attend at once? Why don't we have a public, invite the public at a specified time? Jim Robbins can attend. I can attend. Anyone, up to one other member of the board can attend. So, because we can have 2 members of the board there, and then the remainder of the board that doesn't attend that meeting can drive by at their convenience. So I really hate to post a meeting for this and run the risk of having a member not be able to vote on the decision, which is.
I like that idea, Mark.
Yeah.
I do too, because it's more important to me, quite frankly, if they get some sort of a mock-up to be able to, I mean, I'm familiar with the site, to be able to drive up Smith Drive and look, at 9 o'clock at night is what I would like to do, is drive up later at night, maybe at twilight, and have more of an idea of what I'm looking at than, kind of walking around the site. So, Mark, I think your idea makes sense.
I would just
All right.
reinforce that point too. Let's schedule a meeting after the applicants indicated that they have the, mock-up or, whatever they intend to put up, that they have something to show us. Maybe that was assumed, but I'd like to know the applicant's ready, has something ready on a date certain.
Yeah, I
All
also,
All right, so let's, go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
yeah, Mark, sorry. I agree with that, but I also think it would be important just to give the community more notice. If we schedule something next week, there's only a couple of days, you know what I mean?
Well, you're all echoing my thinking. So since we're not going to have it done for the first, I would suggest Jim Robbins' next late night, the Tuesday night, the hours are till 8 o'clock. And I don't know if Jim Robbins, I don't want to put this on you, but can you do a meeting on Tuesday, the 8th, Jim? That gives the applicant plenty of time to get a mock-up in place, gives the public notice, plenty of notice, and gives you, again, I hate to ask you to come in at like 7:30 on a night when you're not normally working. Yeah.
That's not a problem at all. We may even
So why don't we?
after sunset.
Well, yeah, I hate to go up there. I don't know if the public wants to show up for a 9 o'clock meeting. I would, but what time are you thinking?
Mark, can you discuss this at the next meeting? Since the interested public will likely be attending?
Well, I don't know if there's any interested public here where we can, it is a public hearing still until we continue.
I mean on the first. Yeah,
the only reason I wanted to do it tonight was I wanted to set a date tonight so that the public had as much notice as possible, but I don't mind.
Got it. I understand.
Let's say tentatively Tuesday, the 8th, and we'll set a time at next meeting.
Okay, but will you do it so that not all the board members have to go? In other words, it won't be a official meeting,
hearing.
but just the public will know that a couple of members of the board are going to be looking at it at a particular time. And they're
Right. I think that's exactly how we'll do it. We'll do it. I'll go. If one other member of the board wants to go, first person to speak up can attend. And Jim Robbins has said he'll be there. And I would just propose that we tentatively schedule Tuesday, the 8th at 7:30. I think that's close enough to, twilight, that we'll be able to get some sense of the impact without making people show up at 9 p.m.
I would suggest you do 8, no earlier than 8.
All right, Jim, I was trying to make it easier for you because you have a long ride home. So
No, I don't
why don't
like
we-
doing that.
all right, so why don't we do 8 o'clock then on the 8th? And that'll be a tentative date. We'll announce that again next week and get any feedback from the neighbors as well as the applicant. Okay. I don't think we need to motion that or vote on it because it's not going to be a meeting, and it's just does everyone feel that way? Do we need to take an official vote on that?
We do not need a vote.
I think so.
Okay.
We do not need a
So,
vote.
all right. So that being done, why don't we move on to the next agenda item, which is a continued public hearing for the site plan review application at 1400 West Park Drive. I know we just got engineering comments recently from Teague & Bond on the engineering review. The applicant did respond to those today, but I think we're going to give the engineering department a chance to review that and take that issue up next week, unless Lisa has questions. Lisa, Elaine, do you have any questions that you want to get out now?
No, I'll be talking with them tomorrow, so. Started.
So Jim Robbins, I'd like to have you just summarize where we're at and what issues are open for discussion tonight, and then we can go to the board for questions.
For the record, the town engineer is doing the site review, the engineering review for this project, 1400 West Park Drive. Ty and Bond is doing the engineering review for the previous project, 4400 Computer Drive. These numbers are so close together, 1400 and 4400. that it's easy to get them confused. But I have asked our peer reviewer from McMahon Associates to be here this evening. Jeffrey is here from McMahon to present to the board their findings on the traffic review and some possible recommendations for mitigation.
Okay, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you to the members of the board for having me this evening. Again, for the record, Jeff Bandini, McMahon Associates, 350 Miles Standish Boulevard in Taunton, Massachusetts. Just to kind of go over our peer reviews. So we were in receipt of two documents that we used to conduct our peer review for this project. One being the traffic assessment memo dated March 1st by Vanessa and Associates. It basically outlined the comparison between the previous assessed project in terms of what that included in terms of size and use compared to the new proposed size and use of the development. And also the intersection site distance plan that looked to graphically represent the quantity of site distance available to make sure that the access to the proposed development was up to the standards of the American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials, also known as AASHTO. So we conducted our assessment based on those two documents. And generally, the assessment was done in conformance with standard engineering practice using the Institute of Transportation Engineers land use code to establish the amount of trips that were to be established and generated using the both the former and current use. And so our first comment was mostly relative to just making sure and confirming the proposed size of the facility and the use of the facility. Those familiar with the ITE land use codes, generally those are predicated on, the type of facility, the former use being a general office building and the new site being the proposed medical. So though the new proposed medical office building is going to be, or is proposed to be about half the size, due to the generating characteristics of the development, it's very similar to what a general office building would generate based on the size of both facilities. So we were just wanted to clarify that the applicant confirmed that those calculations are in fact correct based on our outline. We did produce Table A in our letter that just outlined what the weekday morning peak, weekday afternoon peak, and total weekday volumes to be generated by the site would be based on our calculations. So our assessment was just to have the applicant confirm that those numbers are in fact correct. In terms of the intersection site distance plan, there are a couple of things that we would like to just point out in terms of the measurements of the intersection site distance from the driveway. We did perform a site distance evaluation field visit as part of our peer review. So we did notice that there was a bicycle lane along West Park Drive. So we just wanted to make sure that the measurements that AASHTO requests, their guidelines measure 14 and a half feet, from the edge of travelway. So we just want to make sure that those measurements are taken from the edge of travelway, given that the bike lane is present. As far as the evaluation from a speed and recommended / requirement point of view, we just want to make sure that the amount of site distance available is based on the AASHTO speed from their formula 9-1. There wasn't a consideration from the applicant that the speed along West Park Drive is 25 miles an hour. As part of our field evaluation, we did measure the 85th percentile speed and found that it was slightly higher at about 32, between 29 and 32 miles an hour. So what that would do would require that more site distance be available when exiting and approaching site driveway from West Park Drive. So we would request that the applicant field verify that data just to make sure that our considerations are in fact correct, and to put some sort of notes and conditions on the plan that when constructing the site driveway, that all of the plantings be below 2.5 feet in height, as to not block the site distance for that location. And also the intersection site distance plan excluded any sort of evaluation on actual stopping site distance, which is, ASHTO's requirement. Intersection site distance is more of a recommendation, whereas stopping site distance is more of the requirement. And that information was not included on the plan. So generally, we would like to just see the plan populated with that information. And we think that the plan is it's a good plan. To certainly, there could be some more information that would be provided that, we would be able to, give our full sign off on the evaluation of both the memorandum and the intersection site distance plan. So at this time, if the applicant wants to respond, or I'd be happy to take questions from the board at this time on our response memo.
All right, well, why don't we give the applicant a chance to respond? I think, and then we can turn to the board for questions for you, and then hear from the applicant again. Who wants to represent the applicant on this?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Howard Mosier with VHB in Boston, joined by a number of members of the project team also. I would like to respond first to the site distance comment, if possible. I have an exhibit to share, if it pleases the board.
Sure.
Right.
So we have to give you, okay, great.
So I'm hoping people can see my screen. Just looking for a nod from somebody. Oh, there you go.
Yes, you're
Thank
good.
you.
Go
The
ahead.
internet's still working. So we prepared for the board and all the departments last week a thorough response to comments memo with updated plans and a number of exhibits. This revised intersection site distance exhibit was included within that package. And what it does is it accomplishes a couple things that Mr. Bandini raised in his comment letter. First and foremost, we had originally done just intersection site distance because stopping site distance was a lower quantity. So we hadn't provided it. We took the longer distances. But what we've also done is and included some detail in the tables to reflect the various speeds that McMahon noted in the field, particularly when people are traveling southbound on West Park Drive, they're going downhill. So speeds were observed to be a little higher. When they're climbing the hill, they were not as fast. And so you can see these purple triangles. The one that would need to be seen to see the cars traveling down the hill is a little bit longer at 412 feet. And all this information that was requested has been provided. So, happy to go through the details, but I'm sure Mr. Bandini would want to dig in and verify the calculations. But I think we've addressed every one of the site distance calculations, the 14 feet from the travel lane, not the bike lane, and all the various speeds and percentiles are included within the calculations. So that has been prepared and responded to. So a lot of engineering there, not a lot of nice graphics. I would say, and I was trying to go through, is the other question was on the confirmation of the trip generation calculations. We are working with the transportation consultant on that and are preparing to file an official response for the entire board. We don't believe there was any need for additional confirmation, but we just weren't able to get that in time to be heard for tonight's meeting. And we're expecting that response shortly.
Okay, any other issues, or we can turn to the board? Jim Robbins, I wanted you to go first on this one, and then we can get the board's comments. Do you have any questions?
I have no questions. The line of sight is definitely a big issue. Now that that information is there, I just ask that Jeff at McMahon take a look at that and respond. The line of sight and the stopping distance, I think, are the most important thing.
Okay. Let's go to the board for questions. And anyone on the board want to start?
I don't have any further questions, Mark.
Okay.
Nor do I, Mark.
Hazel?
No
Okay,
further
Tim,
questions.
Peter?
Nothing.
Okay. So I did have one question for Jeff, and I guess it relates to my comment at the last meeting about, increased trips on local roads. And I'm just wondering, Jeff, if you can comment on the impact of this project on, again, I'm not sure what was in the scope of your review, or if if you can tell me, based on your reach, whether there'll be additional trips through the new intersection of West Park Drive and Flanders Road and the surrounding roads that, might be impacted. And I guess that's a very general question, but I'm just trying to get a feel for whether, we have some intersections that are already overtaxed, and I'd like to know what impact this is going to have on those.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. And of course, we've worked with, the town of Westborough on a few of these assessments relative to West Park Drive and the extension and also the assessment on Flanders Road as it pertains to, the intersection of East Main. So as part of one of our previous reviews and be happy to share that as part of this evaluation, but as part of the evaluation of Flanders Road and the West Park Drive extension, we did put together a list of recommendations that we felt would be appropriate as to address the additional trips and by some degree of measure mitigate some of the existing traffic that travels along those roadways, whether that be from a capacity standpoint or it be from a safety standpoint, being some sort of like geometric improvement or some measure at reducing speeds or vehicle conflict points or something like that. So, we've provided the town some of that information. I'd be happy to speak specifically to those. I think a lot of them are related to, again, aimed at those geometric and safety improvements. And that's a lot of it, I think, personally is very low hanging fruit. I think it's something that could be very easily implementable by, the applicant for this project or whether it be any sort of other applicant that would desire to construct their facility, in the immediate surrounding vicinity of the local roadways, whether that be Flanders Road or East Main or anything like that. So, we have that kind of list almost at the ready. So I guess it's up to the town's discretion in terms of what they feel would be most impactful. I know at one point we did discuss a potential signal at the East Main at Flanders Road intersection. And from my recollection, that the town did not think that installation of a signal at that location was feasible at this time, as they felt it would induce additional demand to the Flanders Road roadways and intersections, and that's not something that the town was looking to pursue at this time. So short of installing a signal, I think there are certainly measures that could be easily implemented as part of any sort of mitigation strategy for the surrounding area.
Mark.
Yeah, I don't know. Hazel, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Can we go back to the picture of the intersection of the preceding one that you showed with the intersection of
Driveway, yes, of course.
Yeah, and thing. All right. My question, as much as anything else, is going to be what are we using as far as traffic control signs? Are we going to have a stop sign there? Are we going to have a right-hand turn lane? There are going to be 3 lanes there so that you've got a right-hand turn lane plus a left-hand turn lane essentially, and stop signs. How is that going to be managed?
So
Because I'm concerned mainly about the people coming down the hill and people coming out of that driveway.
Good question. Would you like me to respond to members of the board or?
Please go ahead, Howard.
Okay, great. And I'll just always wait. Just let me know what you want me to do. But the only control proposed at this driveway is a stop sign as people are leaving the driveway to enter and across. that I think it's just a fairly typical office driveway. So one stop sign here, no stop control on the main road. It would be somewhat unexpected and unconventional. So all we're proposing is one stop line. It's one lane of traffic in each direction, north and south, north, south, and then one lane of traffic on the driveway. So think in terms of just a smaller commercial driveway.
Okay, when you did your analysis, what kind of traffic did you see, like on a half-hour basis or an hourly basis? I mean, what figures were you using as to how many people or cars would be using that intersection on a sort of a daily basis or an hourly basis?
So I'm going to get over my skis now since I'm not the traffic engineer, but I'm going to say to a degree right now, West Park Drive is a dead end. So all vehicles would, well, almost all vehicles would be taking a right out of the driveway and heading back towards the regional roads. When the proposed West Park Drive connection to Flanders is accomplished, that would redistribute the traffic.
Right.
And I will say that Member Nurse, that I think we'd have to get you the hourly estimate. There was some trip generation on a daily basis, but I don't know if any hourly driveway traffic was estimated. So I'd have to get with the traffic engineer on that to get you a really good response.
Yeah, because another concern is that as soon as that connection of Flanders Road goes through, which will be through before your project's done, I would assume, at looking at the way those two projects are going, when you have people that are leaving the office parks further up West Park Drive at, let's say, 5 o'clock at night, or I don't know what the hours are, we may run into some real traffic problems with people coming out of the driveway there and wanting to make a left-hand turn. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep, good comment. I think we would look at that estimate. I'd say one thing that's a bit different about a medical office building like this than a general office is you see a volume of people coming throughout the day, as opposed to, so to speak, 9-to-5ers in a commercial office park. So I don't know if that brings comfort, but the traffic to a medical office building tends to be distributed more widely through the day, as opposed to heavy peaks in the morning and afternoon, like an office setting. So that does distribute it, leaving our facility more than just pure commercial office.
Okay, well, I think it's something we need to think about a little bit, because there may be certain times during the day that and it may be something that's going to have to be reviewed later on, after both of these projects have been finished. I mean, it could be 6 months down the road beyond that, where there may be something we're going to have to come up with some ideas that, at certain times during the day, it might have to be a right turn only or a left turn only. It's not like people are stopped from getting out either way. It's just as far as convenience go to people that are using the facilities. So I think it's something we need to just keep in mind, which is the reason I asked the question about whether there might be 3 lanes there with people leaving. And so you've got a dedicated right-hand turn lane or something kind of along those ideas, depending on what we're talking about. So I think it's just something we need to keep in mind.
Thank you. Good comment.
Okay. Hazel, I think that is a good comment. I just, my feeling on that is that, with the sight distance they've demonstrated, it'll be a safe intersection. It may take, there may be periods in the day where they'll take extra time to get out, waiting for an opening. But that'll be at the convenience of the patients and the occupants, the employees. And if that becomes too difficult, I think because it's a private street, it'll be on them to fix it, not the town. Right? I mean, that's my take on it. I definitely think we need to look at whether the design is flawed in any way, but I don't think it's flawed at this point. But I agree, we could keep that in mind.
Okay.
I did want to get back, though, to the impact on some public streets in town and whether this project will impact local roads. And I guess my recollection, Jeffrey, is not that the town didn't want a light at the end of East Main. I guess it was more that we didn't feel like the West Park Drive extension project was the driving force, but behind trip generation. And, you know, where this project is slightly different in that they're drawing on local patients, you know, and one of the stated purposes is to service Central Mass residents. I think that many of those residents will be taking local roads. And I'm just concerned about, particularly that East Main Street intersection being, you know, already beyond the warrants. And Jeff, you can support me on that. I think you said that it already is past the limit where a light would be needed. And with this project bringing more traffic to that intersection, in my opinion, we really need to start looking at a solution. You know, I don't know how the rest of the board feels on that, but you know, I wanted to bring it out now.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to respond to that, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, Jeff, please let me know.
Okay,
I'll let you go.
absolutely. And I think, you know, the previous discussion on this, I think, raised a couple of interesting points. Certainly with respect to the generation being distributed more towards, you know, an even section throughout the day rather than a typical office building. And, you know, that's certainly predicated on our comment on why we wanted to just make sure that we were providing and the information being provided to us was in fact correct. So if we're going to compare and start looking at peak hour volumes and how that impacts the adjacent roadway, then certainly we want to make sure those numbers are in fact correct. The second thing is, you know, once the West Park Drive extension is completed, what sort of distribution numbers would the applicant anticipate out of the site driveway? And it was even discussed is there enough left-hand turns such that it warrants separate left and right-hand turns? So is that desire line based on, you know, calculations and considerations from the applicant that there are in fact going to be a lot of people turning left out of the site to go towards the new West Park Drive extension and would manifest the trips would manifest themselves as additional trips to that East Main Flanders Road intersection? Those are questions that, you know, would make sense to have the answer to if the board is, you know, even remotely concerned about, you know, traffic generation from this proposed development and how that would impact the operations on the adjacent roadways. So I think that's certainly a fair point. It's something worth exploring. If we can get to the point where we all agree on the trip generation numbers, you know, maybe it's worth requesting that the applicant put together a trip distribution diagram and assignment diagram. It's just so we can have an idea of the scope of how many additional trips we're anticipating adding to the local roadways, just to kind of put that in some sort of like framework, so we can assess if it's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Let me just.
So can I just finish my thought, Hazel?
Sure.
So I'm sorry, give me a sec. So I'm a little more than remotely concerned about it. So I guess I would agree with the need for more data, but I think common sense and some of the previous discussion we had on the West Park Drive extension, where, you know, the conclusion, as I recall, was that there will be more trips through those intersections. And so it seems logical to me that this project would generate some of those trips. So Hazel, you had a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to say, these are doctor's offices, my understanding is, but are your doctor's offices open from like, with appointments from like 8 to 5 kind of thing, which means that most of the staffing of the doctor's offices and doctors will be at a particular time, they'll be leaving the facility at a particular time. So yes, the patients are going to be spread over a full day as far as people going in and out. But what about the comings and goings of the staff? So I just wanted to throw that in when we're talking about, trips and so forth. And so it's easy to say it's going to be spread out, but then you got to think about the staff.
So a couple points on that. This is going to have somewhat extended hours from the 9 to 5 shoulder. It generally starts around 7, and depending on the department in there, if there's some imaging, it might go a little past 5. So it's spread out over a longer day. So we're looking at extended hours to stretch that out. And since this facility will have some types of rotating specialists, it might be some people that aren't there for the full day, and on the practitioner side. There might be specialists that come in for an afternoon here or an afternoon there, depending on the patient volume. Just in terms of, just to kind of put it on balance, this is 60,000 square feet. We are looking, and this is just an approximate number. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but just in terms of our patient volume, we're looking at about 250 to 350. So let's say 300 people a day. That would be patients coming in and out over a 10 to 12 hour day. So not a lot of, I understand the concern about traffic, and I'm not seeking to minimize it in any way, but it's not going to be a tremendous amount, because that is spread out through the day with the appointments. Some appointments are quick, some are a little longer. So just to kind of give you a sense on the volume. And I think to Jeff Bandini's point, maybe once we start to distribute these trips through, you can see it's only a modest increase from what was already planned in the office park. So, as you filter it out, the impact gets less and less the further afield. So I think that might be something worth considering and seeing if that impact gets metered out, once you get past the initial primary intersections.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, it's Peter Bouchard. I'm still concerned about emergency vehicles on that side of town. Just based on, you have all these patients coming to this hospital or to this facility, and most emergency vehicles are in the downtown area. I just don't know if there's enough support for this facility. That's my question here.
So I believe last time the question did come up, and being a doctor's office, the only time that any ambulance would be expected to come is if a patient shows up for a regular appointment, like just a regular appointment, and they're much sicker than they even thought. Maybe they thought they were healthy, and then something happens and they call in. So I think that the expectation isn't that it's going to be an ambulance heavy.
Yeah, so I'm the one who asked the question previously. Right. So do you have any numbers to I'm sure you have another facility similar to this. So do you have any numbers that represent how many emergencies you maybe have in a month period? I just want to know. Yeah, I know we were worried about the traffic up there, but if I'm more concerned about the emergency vehicles getting up there, if there is the traffic and if we're suitable for all that. So if you could provide any numbers on how often an emergency vehicle has to come to a location like this, that would put me at ease, I think.
I'm trying to remember. I thought we responded last time. I think it was about 3 times a month for a similar facility, 3 times a month. So it was low. And if that's wrong, we will get a clarification. So for the record, but I think I recall a 3 times a month number.
Howard, I apologize if I missed that. So thank you. That's important to me.
Thanks, Peter. Any other questions from the board at this time?
Mark, I would comment that, as options go up here for this site, the fact that this does distribute traffic to the day certainly is ideal to some alternatives. So, and that, my thinking, if I was going there for an appointment, this is on the Route 9 side, I'm likely to be going Route 9, not Flanders Road, but, someone on Flanders Road is likely to take it. So I'm just thinking about, given its location in the park versus at the other end of the park, that's the likely way people will travel. That would be my expectation.
So I guess my feeling on that, Jim, and we have intersections that are overtaxed already. And we have a project here that will create more traffic and will contribute to the problem. So I just want to know at what point we ask them to contribute to the solution, right? I'm not saying the whole entire solution is their responsibility, but if, as West Park Drive, if we don't ask for a contribution here, well, the next project, are we going to ask them for the whole thing? Or the project after that? At what point does this become so burdensome that, the town has to do something, but has no contribution from these applicants or future applicants or any applicants to help us defray the cost of a solution, right? I don't necessarily expect the entire solution to be on one applicant, but I just think there's, when you're contributing to the problem, which I firmly believe, and again, I'm a supporter of this project. I just want to know at what point do we ask for contribution to the solutions. Okay. So again, I
understand.
Any other questions from the board? I think I've made my piece clear on that. I don't know. Howard, did you want to respond to that at all?
Well, I think it's an important discussion for the board. And I would say that, we owe a little bit of supplemental information to the peer reviewer, Mr. Bandini. I think that if there's a reasonable proposal, I think the team would want to hear it. We understand where you're coming from. We work on these projects, and I live in a town that has projects proposed within it, but I think we would need to understand, we don't feel this is a super impactful project, but I hear what your message is. It's death by 1,000 cuts sometimes, and there's an incremental effect. So what I would recommend, I think here is that if through the planning department, if there was a proposal, the Mass General Brigham team would be receptive to a proposal. But we just want to understand the context.
So I guess with that, I want to ask Jim Robbins his thoughts, because he's been pretty quiet, and then we can turn to the public for any comments.
Thanks, Mark. So a question to Jeff. In the background research regarding surrounding streets, and I know you were involved in the peer review of the West Park Drive extension, the distribution of trips to Flanders Road to East Main Street was not going to create any additional traffic from the extension of West Park Drive to Flanders Road, because there were no new buildings being built. There were no additional trips incented through a new project. However, the opening of the road itself and the connection helps to spread the burden of trips that would normally have gone out to Research Drive, taken a left, and then probably taken a right on Old Flanders Road. So those are not new trips. Those are trips that were already there from existing uses. This is a new use. And so they will also be availed to the ease or access of West Park Drive to Flanders Road. The intersection of East Main and Flanders Road was already, I believe, at level of service F, and had received the okay from Mass Highway that it met the warrants for a signal at that intersection. I just want to confirm that, number one. And number two, and this is because I'm not a transportation planner, this is a question. When you have an intersection that's at level of service F, and you add any additional traffic to it, it's already a bad circumstance. And it's going to get worse, but it's already at failure. So failure is failure, whether you add one trip or 100 trips to it. At some point, the town needs to address that failure. So my question is, can we confirm the level of service of failure? And what would be the right way to address that? And if you don't, you may not have the answer tonight, Jeff.
No, that's okay. And I can kind of just respond from just my knowledge of our, past workings within the town. I believe the signal warrant analysis was based on, since, we are in a COVID situation, at least as of now, the traffic volumes, that we collected were lower than historic volumes that we obtained from Mass DOT. So the measuring stick in terms of how the intersection meets warrants and its evaluation of the level of service is certainly predicated on some level of assumptions from our point of view. And again, we're working with the information that we have, and that's all we can really do. So in terms of evaluating that based on what we use, yeah, the intersection does meet traffic signal warrants. And again, it's not to say that because a signal meets warrants that a traffic signal is, it's a given that it definitely needs to be installed. It's just basically saying that it could be installed. It meets the criteria to be installed, whether that actually fits the scope of the study area or whether that fits the desire of the entity to be installed, certainly remains to be seen. And it's certainly perhaps not an appropriate treatment at some locations. And again, that's based on, multiple factors, whether it's, a commercial or residential driveway. Obviously, I'm speaking in generalities in terms of signal warrants as a whole, but, just knowing the residential portion of this street. And I think there were some merits to what was discussed previously as to, putting a signal there, is that going to draw additional trips to that location? And is that something that folks on Flanders Road, is it potential that because we make the operation, a signal would make the operations that much better, that it is now an unintended consequence of installing a signal is that more people use it? And now traffic is being drawn away from arterials and collectors that are anticipated to handle larger volumes. Those volumes are now being filtered to places that aren't supposedly built to handle those volumes. So these are just questions that I just want to make the town aware that may need to be answered at some point, whether that's, for this project or any number of other projects that may be planned on West Park Drive. So in terms of like some sort of fair share contribution, we certainly understand the merits of wanting to do something like that. We've been a part of projects in the past where, a signal may not be something that it would be built, even though warrants are met, but it's something that, like, as you said, over time, 50 vehicles per peak hour for this project and so on and so forth. Eventually it gets to a point where it's completely oversaturated. And if the town were to ask at some point for some sort of fair share, if it could be put into some sort of escrow where eventually when it gets to that sort of tipping point, that those monies could be used to pay for the installation of a traffic signal or some sort of other, traffic control device or warning signs or some sort of other mitigation that the town would see fit, relative to the increase in traffic. So I hope that answers the question at this point, without looking at any sort of hard data in front of me. I think that's the overall philosophy that I think, the town can consider.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I think those are good points. Why don't we, does anyone, Jim Robbins, do you have anything else before we?
Just a comment. So earlier Howard showed the triangle for line of sight leaving the site. I believe both those site distances, one was in excess of 400 feet. I think it was 412 feet, and the other one was in excess of 270 feet. I think 272 feet. Yeah, 412 and 272. So just confirmation. I know 412 meets AASHTO standards. Does 272 meet the AASHTO standards?
That meets it for, and I'm going to shoot from memory here. The 272 was reflecting the increased speed at the 29 going up. 272 here meets the 85th percentile speed. 272 requirement met for both intersection and stopping sight distance.
So
All the
the,
calculations in AASHTO.
that's at 29 miles an hour. And what did we show for recorded speeds?
29. We took this out of the McMahon report.
Okay,
We modified this specifically to match the operational speeds in the peer review comment.
thank you.
85th percentile speed is the correct term, but that was a direct reference.
Jim, are you all set then? Do you have
I'm
anything
all
else?
set. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the board since we had some discussion, and I just want to make sure that everybody had a chance to ask all their questions. I thought Hazel had something else. I'm not sure if anyone else.
Yeah, I did. Is anybody else?
Right.
Comments? All right. I'm sort of trying to think this through at this point. I think we're kind of in an odd situation whereby since we have not completed the extension of West Park Drive to Flanders Road, we really don't know what kind of traffic is going to be generated going by this facility, going on to, down to Flanders Road. I mean, for example, Olympus is open, so we don't know what portion of that traffic might possibly be going down the extension of West Park Drive instead of going the other way out. So I think we're in a kind of a difficult situation in this, is that we've got some figures, but because we have this unknown as to how much traffic is going to be generated out of the buildings that are going to be going down to the extension of West Park Drive to Flanders Road. I'm just kind of throwing this out. The figures that we're getting back on traffic generation may be a little difficult to come with some accurate figures based on that, which also would talk about the impact which Mark was making on people that are going to be using Flanders Road now, for example, to go out to East Main Street. So I don't know how you solve this, but I'm just kind of throwing it out because we won't really know what these figures are going to be until they open that extension.
So
So hey, Howard, let me just comment on that. So Hazel, I agree with you, but given that the entire point of the West Park Drive extension and the new traffic light was to divert some of the traffic from the upper part of West Park Drive and out to the Route 9 interchange, the entire point of that new light was to divert some of that traffic. I think it's a reasonable assumption that some traffic is going to be generated through that new light. I mean, I would hope so, or else we're having a pretty big project for nothing. So the point there is that I'm not suggesting that one particular intersection, whether it be East Main or Flanders and Connector Road, I don't know what the worst one is and what the most pressing one is. And I don't necessarily think that, this applicant bears a responsibility to fix everything. But I think I like Jeff Bandini's point about a contribution that could be put aside until the town is ready to undertake a solution in one of these intersections and feels that the tipping point has been exceeded. So I don't know what that contribution would be, and I think I interrupted Howard, so I'm going to let him respond as well.
So I'd keep going, Chairman Silverberg. If that's a path, I think we would be receptive to engaging in discussions on that.
Okay. So again, I feel like we've been at this for a while. If nobody else has questions, I do want to give the public a chance. If there's anybody attending the meeting that wants to speak on this, or let me ask Kristen first. Kristen, did we have any email or any other public commentary that came in?
Nothing in the email.
Okay. I would ask if you do want to speak from the public, just use the raise hand feature in the chat at the bottom of your screen. We don't have a lot of people on, so I'll just scroll through, see if anybody wants to comment, and I don't see anyone looking to comment. So why don't we, I guess, Jim Robbins, what's our next step on this? We're going to continue this to next week.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes, you still have some issues outstanding. I mean, we're talking about the traffic. We'd have to discuss what mitigation would be. You can't discuss that outside the public hearing. That has to be resolved before you approve the plan. You also need the engineering comments to be reviewed and responded to by the applicant.
So I guess in the past, we've had a work session with, outside of the meeting to discuss potential mitigation. Is that a route we'd want to take on this, or just see if the applicant wants to come back with a proposal?
So I think
mitigation.
my suggestion, because work sessions are productive, is that the applicant meet with 2 members of the board. You have to stay away from the quorum issue. Can't have more than 2 members of the board to discuss what mitigation priorities would be, and then give them an opportunity to sharpen their pencil and see what the dollar amount might be. But I would also ask, if we do that, that the applicant allow us to extend our contract with them, with McMahon Associates, so they can respond to anything that relates to traffic issues.
All right, Howard, do you understand that?
I do, and I think the idea of a work session is well received. I have a colleague, I'm just waiting for confirmation on the extension of the McMahon through my other earbuds, like we're all spy stuff here. But I think we could just waiting on that, but I think I'm gonna filibuster for a moment. Wait for that confirm.
Sure.
But I would just say that in addition to the traffic trip generation clarifications, there were some other outstanding items, and the answer is yes, we will extend the McMahon. So we agree to that caveat.
All right.
So confirmed. So we did receive a number of comments, and we did prepare a very thorough response package, but there are a couple things that are still due to the town and departments and the planning board. And on this screen, I had prepared a response to every comment. It was a 300-page slideshow. I'm only joking, but the geotech memorandum concerning existing conditions was transmitted earlier today. And again, the town engineering department hasn't had time to review it, along with the updated drainage report. Keeping in mind, we are part of a master plan with Olympus. We had to work with the abutting properties on that. The reformatted existing condition survey was also prepared and transmitted earlier today. Again, not part of this record. The trip generation clarifications are in process. And then there were 2 comments on the foundation drains around the building. We are coordinating that plan and hoping to have that done in a day or 2, but that would be prepared on the plans as well. So there were some additional items there, but we think we agree to the work session as a prudent way to bring closure to an issue that is obviously important.
Okay, so clearly I would like to be involved with that work session, but we do have room for 2 members of the board, and I don't want to monopolize that. So can I just get a sense from the board of who would be interested in participating in that? Speak up. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Hazel, anyone? Peter, you want?
If you want me to, I can definitely do it. Yeah.
We only have 2 members, or we have a quorum with 3, don't we?
Yeah, no, we can only have 2 members there. So again,
You could do
anybody
work session if you wanted. If you have more interest than 2, you could meet, say, from 10 to 11 with 2 members, and then they leave and another member or 2 comes in.
Mark and Hazel can do it, and that's fine with me. Whatever
okay.
the
Peter, thanks for that. That makes it a little easier. So
yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
whatever you want to do.
So why don't we take the timing of that meeting offline so we don't take up more time? And Howard, we'll get you a couple of times tomorrow and see what works for your schedule and whoever you need to be there. Okay.
Sounds excellent. Thank you for all the comments. We're excited about the project, and so thank you for helping advance it.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation and the time, and we'll see you. I assume you'll be on the agenda again next week. So hopefully we can find a time later this week to do that work session. Okay. It's Memorial Day weekend, so we'll see. And Friday's like my only open day. So if you want to work Friday, I will. All right. Anyway, we'll get you some times tomorrow and see what we can make happen. I'd like to move on to the next. Oh, we need to continue this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to continue the site plan review of 1400 West Park Drive to June 1st, 2021 at 6:30.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Peter Bouchard,
Yes.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
Hazel.
Yes, to continue.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to continue to next week. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a discussion and possible approval for site plan review requirements relative to outdoor seating for restaurants. Jim Robbins, I think you have an update for why don't we have you summarize the issue? And then I believe there was an update today that might impact this. So I'm not sure we'll have to act today. So, but Jim, I'll give you the floor for this.
Mark, so I'm only going to briefly outline it. And Fred Leonardo is here this evening. Fred is more deeply involved than I am, and as the zoning enforcement officer, will ultimately be his responsibility. However, as you know, the site plan review requirements at our local level require that any extension of a use either beyond 5 new parking spaces, either used, extended, or removed, or an additional 2,000 square feet to any existing use triggers a major site plan review. A major site plan review is conducted by the board. The governor's order extending outdoor dining expires August 15th. Today, the governor has filed legislation to extend that time period to November 29th. However, that is legislation. It's not an emergency executive order. It requires a vote of the state legislature. There's no definite assumption that it'll pass. I would suspect it will. However, we need to be prepared in the event that it doesn't. And so I'm going to tag team to Fred at this point.
Thanks, Jim. So what really comes up for the board is it's twofold. We're going to hope that the legislation does pass so we won't have to address it this year. But if it doesn't, one of the things that council has advised us that we could do, or the board could do, is there's roughly 7 or 8 restaurants that would be affected by this if they had to go to site plan. One of the things they advise us is that we could do it in one meeting if you had to. We'd have to still notice all the abutters for all 7 or 8 spots, but the board could take this up as one in one meeting instead of having 7 or 8 separate meetings. So I'd want the board to consider that, hopefully. And the second thing too, kind of in line with this, is about the fees, because the minimum site plan fee is $1,000. So there'd be some question to whether the board would be willing to basically forgive or not charge that fee, at least for this year. So those are some of the 2 major things I'd like the board to think about if you had to go that way. Because we can't get around the site plan. If the Baker's legislation doesn't pass, we're going to kind of be forced to look at the site plan and do something with it. And it has to happen pretty rapidly if we're going to help the businesses. and we're not going to know immediately. Hopefully we're going to know by June 15th, but that's not a done deal. That's kind of the pace we're looking at.
So Fred, I have a couple of questions on this. Tim, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
No, I
Tim
can
Kaler,
let you
go ahead.
start.
Okay. I just had a couple of questions. Since the original governor's order doesn't expire till August, when would we need to, I guess what would be our deadline? Just that August, I think it's August 15th?
Right, it is,
We'd
Mark.
have to, okay.
Yes,
So
you'd have to have.
we need a couple of, so you'd want us to act by the end of July or so, just to be safe?
Yeah, maybe even before.
And then,
I'm sorry.
and then I guess, my feeling on the site plan application fees is, I'd be perfectly willing to waive those. I think it's probably, would it be 8 separate fees that we'd be waiving or just one because it's only one? Either way, I'd waive them all. The question of notifying the abutters, that presents a cost as well. And who's going to bear that cost? Would the 8 restaurants involved share that cost, or is there money available to relieve them of that burden as well? I don't know if and I don't know if the COVID relief package is accounted for anything like that. So those are the thoughts I have on it. And Tim Kaler, you were about to say something too. So
Yeah, I wanted to understand from Fred the timetable here. So you were sort of getting at it, but I don't have a complete picture. So the action that the board needs to take, assuming the state does not support Baker's legislature, you're saying we need to act by July, before the order expires. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're correct, Tim.
All right, and what we need to act to do is to provide a site plan review process for restaurants with outdoor seating that's been installed since COVID.
Yeah, it's the ones that are specific to parking lots. So all of them, but like 1 or 2 affected their parking lots. The other ones that didn't really was Tavolino's. The other ones extended into their parking lot one way or another.
So that violates their parking covenants and so forth. Okay.
That's under our site plan review. That's what triggers that.
Okay. So my question was just, we provide a process. The legislation doesn't pass. That process needs to come into play. How long before the applicants have to, basically engage in that site plan review process? Do we have 90 days, 60 days?
No, it all has to happen pretty rapidly, Tim, because
immediately.
If they want to extend past the August 15th, because everything has to be in place prior to that.
I got you. Otherwise, they would have to disassemble by August 15th and forget operations in their lot. Okay, so they have to be notified. Wouldn't we have to provide notice to them and to abutters?
Well,
some period in advance.
Yeah, so we're telling them, the economic development coordinator, Zach, is going to reach out to these individual restaurants and tell them, that we're hoping and anticipating that legislation will be passed, that they won't have to go through any of this. But in the advent that it doesn't, that they're going to be obligated, if they want to continue, and most have indicated they want to continue past August 15th, because we've already asked that question, that they would have to go through the site plan process. Even if you waive the fees, they still have to go through that process. They'd also have to go through ABCC and local select board. So they'd have to do 3 things. Some of the things to think of too is that and we're hoping none of this is going to happen. So again, I don't want to keep overemphasizing that. So this may be an academic exercise, but having said that, the board would also have to think about what they're willing to accept for an application, because normally we have an engineered print. It gets very sophisticated. You might end up with I don't want to be facetious, but you might end up with the equivalent of a crayon drawing in these. I mean, that's kind of what we got on the front end last year.
Fred, could we have on-site visits to these restaurants that would suffice as site plan review? Or do we have to actually have schematics and
public hearing? The board has its own regulations that are in print, that are online, as to what needs to be submitted. There's a fee, there's an application that legally describes the property, There's an existing site plan that shows where the restaurant is now. And what they did for the first time around was they just provided a simple hand drawing. They said, here's the parking lot. We want to put the tent over these 10 spaces, just as an example. I think you, in my opinion, you'd do the same thing, only you'd make them fill out an application this time. You'd formally have a public hearing that was advertised in the paper and that with 2 weeks public notice, and that was with certified mail to the abutters. It could be a postcard. And we've discussed this internally, how we would run this process. And maybe you do one big hearing where all 8 restaurants come to the same hearing, but you have separate applications. So you vote separately at restaurant A, restaurant B. You approve them all separately, but you have one hearing. So that quickens the process. But one thing that Fred mentioned earlier is that Zach is going to reach out to the restaurants and suggest that they begin the application now, so that if June 15th comes and the legislation doesn't pass, they're already in the process. And if the legislation passes, they throw the application away, and it doesn't cost them any money.
But to Fred's point, we can't, it may be moot that we're talking about this now, but it's not moot. We have to assume the legislation is not going to pass.
Right.
We have to assume that it's not, and just that it does. I can think of one restaurant where all their parking is taken by this outdoor dining. At what point are they in violation? I mean, this sounds like just an exercise in having them submit a modification to their site plan. But at what point does their outdoor dining in replacing their parking and inhibit, you know, the legal operation of that site?
So, Tim, we're only talking about through a specified, it would be an extension. It wouldn't be a permanent waiver. We're only talking about through, I think the governor is only talking about the end of November on this, right? So if we were to grant site plan approval, it would be closed-ended.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a permanent.
Okay, that's an important
you know,
clarification for me. So in the spring of 22,
Yeah,
if they want an outdoor location, they're going to have to
they're
submit.
going to have to go through the normal process and come
All right.
up with normal, you know, traditional application at their own cost and
Okay.
prove that their application either conforms to zoning or, you know, request waivers from zoning, or, you know, or go for a variance,
Okay,
right? Which,
that
you know,
clarifies it. Okay.
all right. So
I think, not to interrupt, Mark.
I want to apologize. Yeah, Peter, just one second. I just want to apologize. I got cut off for a second. I'm having a little instability with my Wi-Fi, just in case that happens again. So, Peter, go ahead.
I just think it's important that we do everything possible for these businesses in town. They've struggled over the last year because of COVID. Let's have a plan put in place. I think Fred brought up some valuable points here. Let's just have an alternative plan and have a backup situation, because we don't want them to suffer. Because if they go through another bad year, I don't know if they're still all going to be in business. And the town really needs these businesses. It brings joy to the community, and it brings a place for people to, you know, to mingle. So I think it's important to have that backup plan. And I think what Fred presented makes sense, and we need to protect these businesses. And that's just my feeling on this.
Just for the point that made previous, I'd certainly support a waiver. And if there are advertising costs, my guess is that we should talk to the town manager. There's certainly plenty of funds that have come into the town due to COVID that might be applicable for the nominal cost of advertising the public session. I don't consider that as an impediment. I like the
Any
idea
other-
of all 7 at once too.
Yeah,
Any other comments?
no, Mike, if you don't mind, I'll just, I should have clarified that the second point that Tim brought up too, and you did. And that's one of the things that I'll make sure the EDC coordinator specifies to the restaurants. If they want to continue this past this summer, fall, they will have to go through a full-blown process. You know, this really complicates things, because some of the restaurants, it's not going to really affect their parking, at least not presently. One of the ones that I'm assuming that Tim, you were referring to might be a Toro's.
I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking about the central house because they only have like
That's
8.
true.
If they only have 5, 5 or 6 spots. And they're
Yeah.
all gone.
But interestingly enough, downtown business doesn't have a parking requirement. So it's actually, it gets into we've never really addressed this. It's a very interesting dilemma on how we handle that, because technically they don't have to have parking, but they would suck up all their parking. So, if it goes past this summer, fall, it may become a somewhat complicated conversation for a couple of these restaurants. So it's not something I want you to actually address or think about, but long-term that we may have to have more conversation on that. But more immediately, I think the board now understands at least what they have to understand in the immediate future and the topics that'll come up.
So there's an inconsistency in the zoning though that doesn't require a parking requirement for downtown businesses.
Yeah, it's not that it's inconsistent, it's just built into our parking regs. I guess maybe Jim can comment on it better than obviously I can, but I think the thought is that the municipal parking would cover that. I don't know what you do with the Toros though. Technically he's covered under that. So if he didn't have parking, I'm not really sure where you'd put all his vehicles, to be honest with you, but.
Fred makes a good observation I'd kind of like to address. So it's not an inconsistency in our zoning bylaw, it's intentional. Because there's so much street parking, and because we do have a municipal lot for parking, and because we recently did a downtown parking study that showed there was no parking shortage. That zoning bylaw actually has been in place probably forever. That because of street parking and municipal lot, they didn't feel there was any need to have off-street parking. And so let's look at that. I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but you have 22 restaurants within walking distance of the Rotary. And I bet you all can name 10 that have no parking, right? Pizza House, the Coffee, the Red Barn, Tenka's, not Tenka, the sushi restaurant. There are the diner. There are multiple restaurants that have no parking. So it works. However, you bring up an interesting one, Tim. They have off-street parking. They know there's a need for it, or they think there's a need for it. They provided it. Also, Arturo's has a lot of parking, and we know that's a busy site prior to COVID. So the tent takes up probably 20 parking spots. That's probably an exaggeration, probably 15 or 20.
Oh, they probably do, Jim.
Yeah, okay, so 20. That would be a problem when we return to normalcy. Like if they had the entire restaurant full on a Friday night or a Saturday night, plus the outdoor seating, that would probably be an issue there. But that's an unusual circumstance.
So I don't want to turn this into a referendum on the downtown business zoning. I just want to make this as easy as possible for the restaurants. I want to echo Peter's comments that whatever we can do to facilitate this so that they don't have to take down their tents or whatever on August 15th. We're only looking to extend this through the end of the fall when they would normally take these tents down anyway. And then next spring, everything's back to hopefully normal. So, again, I'm not sure what action we need to take tonight, other than have Fred and the EDC and Jim Robbins start, collecting these site plan applications and encouraging businesses to apply for those. And then we can put this on an agenda I think we can wait to see what the legislature does on by June 15th, and then we'll advertise it and put it on an agenda for July if we need to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Mark.
All right.
Can we take a vote?
All right. So,
Mark, can we take a vote to even in the next meeting to waive the fees, the site plan application?
Well, I think it might be, yeah, I think it might be important to encourage restaurants to actually fill out the application if they knew that the fee was waived. So I'd be amenable to a motion there.
It'd be a
If you want to
nice,
do that.
okay, well, I'd make a motion then that we
Wait a minute.
waive the fees.
Yeah.
Or-
Oh, Hazel, go ahead.
Yeah, quite frankly, I feel that's premature. I mean, I don't think we can really waive the fee at this point. I mean, I think that I would be more comfortable if Fred and Jim were able to say to people, and the EDC person say to them, you know, the board is amenable to waiving the fee and do it that way. But
Okay, so why don't we, instead of making it, I'm sorry, Hazel, why don't we
Isn't the fee
let
due
you
when you
finish?
submit
Go
the
ahead, Hazel.
application? Isn't the fee a function of the application? You have to submit the application with the fee?
Fee is a portion
Jim,
of the
can you
application.
respond?
To be complete, the fee is necessary to be received. If they submit everything else without the fee, we could certainly allow them to submit their application in pieces. Here's my thought on the fee, waiving the fee. I would want to craft a motion that was specific and conditional upon the governor's executive order and the new proposed legislation so that it would be time bound. So for example, the planning board waives the fee for site plan review for the file for restaurants under the order, and I'd have to quote the order, for the following period of time till November 29th. I'd want a motion that was crafted for you before you went ahead.
Well, that makes sense, Jim. All right, why don't we table that issue? But if you want, we can get a sense of who would be willing to waive the fees. I certainly would be.
Absolutely, Mark.
If anybody
I would
else
echo
wants to
all
waive it.
Peter's comments as well.
No, I'm in favor of it. I just want it done.
All right. Seems like there's a consensus on that we would all certainly be willing to entertain to welcome the ability to waive those fees. So let's move past that unless there's other issues with that. So I think we have a course of action and a plan beginning to formulate, at least to come up with a solution for these restaurants. And I think that's important for us to do. Why don't we turn to the next agenda item, which was a master plan update. And I will turn to Jim Robbins for that.
You know, at the last Master Plan Advisory Committee meeting, we split into groups to do our implementation plan. And there are 8 areas of concentration. There's only 1 or 2 still outstanding. Those need to be fully returned. That's the implementation matrix, so that we can have them incorporated into the draft plan. At that time, we would have one last public listening session or public comment period, and then the master plan draft will be circulated to the advisory committee. So we're in the implementation matrix phase. They were actually all due on May 14th, I believe. So if you're listening to this meeting this evening, or if any members of the board still haven't turned in their implementation matrix, please do that ASAP so that VHB can incorporate that into the plan. That's where we are right now.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Any questions on that? All right, I'm not sure if I'm still connected. So somebody speak up.
You're connected.
All right, I'm just frozen. All right.
There you go. You unfroze.
All right. So I guess the next issue item on the agenda was the A&R plan for Gleason Street. And Jim Robbins, I'll let you start on this and see if we even need comments from the applicant or not.
Yeah, so
Go ahead,
thank you,
Jim.
Chairman. You have an A&R plan, which Kristen will be sharing here momentarily. We're talking about 18 and 20 Gleason Street, which are the last two lots in Westborough on Gleason Street before you enter Shrewsbury. So on the western side of Gleason Street, thank you. Kristen, can you enlarge that? And Kristen, if you would, with your pointer, because I don't have control of the pointer, if you would point to lot 4C there, and then the lot just above it, which I think is 4B. Those are two existing lots which are being reconfigured because currently they would not meet the test for zoning for buildability in Westborough. The first lot, which is, 4R, I think on the plan where Kristen's pointer is right now, has land in both Westborough and Shrewsbury, but only buildable in Shrewsbury prior to the A&R plan. Now it would be buildable in either town. The second lot, which is right on the corner, Kristen, if you can occupy that, thank you, is not buildable in Westborough and didn't even have adequate frontage in Westborough. As a result of the new A&R plan, you'll have two buildable lots. The second lot, where Kristen's cursor is still not buildable in Westborough, but would be buildable in Shrewsbury. And it has adequate frontage to meet our A&R law, and it has total area more than 50,000 square feet to be buildable in Shrewsbury, and with adequate area for Westborough as well. It's just that the house will have to go in Shrewsbury. The first lot can go in either town. So you have a plan here in front of you that complies with our zoning bylaw.
So does this mean that the access to any building that's put on this lot that is divided into Shrewsbury and Westborough, the access is in Westborough, but the house is going to be in Shrewsbury?
Correct.
That doesn't violate our zoning laws in any way?
No. Our bylaw says that you have to have adequate frontage and total area, and both lots have adequate frontage and total area. But there's a note on the plan that we always put on all of our plans, is that endorsement of this plan is not a determination of conformance with zoning. So when the applicant applies for a building permit, they would not be able to get a building permit on the second lot. They'd have to go to Shrewsbury to get their building permit. However, on the first lot, they would meet our zoning for a building permit.
Yeah, but in other words, we allow a lot where you just have a driveway and no building?
Correct. As a matter of fact, down the street and at the bottom of this plan is one such lot. The lot below the first lot has the home in Shrewsbury with the driveway in Westborough.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board on this? All right, I will make a motion to endorse. Kristen, you're gonna have to zoom in on the bottom right so I can read that.
You have a motion. You have a motion that.
Oh, okay. Does somebody want to pull that motion up? I don't have it in
I
front of me.
had that, Mark, if you want.
Yeah, Jim, if
I
you
move
could.
that the board approve an A&R plan entitled, yep, sure. I move that the board approve an A&R plan entitled Plan of Land in Shrewsbury and Westborough, Mass, dated 5/20/2021, drawn by HS&T Group Incorporated.
I will second that.
For Gleason Street.
Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call. All those in favor, Hazel Norris,
Yes.
Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
Peter Bouchard,
Mark.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0. All right. I think the last item of business is the minutes. And I will give Jim Ball the floor for this.
Thank you, Mark. You should have all received previously. We have 3 sets of minutes from April 27th, May 4th, and May 15th, which was the town meeting. Any questions on any of those or comments?
No.
No.
If not, I would make a motion. I'm sorry, Hazel, did you have a question?
No, I was, no question.
Oh, okay. All right, I would move that we approve the minutes from April 27th, May 4th, and 5/15 as a group.
Second,
Okay.
You want me to do that roll call or you, Mark?
I'll do it. That's fine, Jim. All those in favor, Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Hazel Norris,
yes,
Peter Bouchard,
Yes.
Jim Ball,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to approve those 3 minutes. All right, Jim Robbins, anything else? Anything? Hazel, you had something. Go ahead.
I would like to bring before the board the request an idea of starting to meet in person. The school board is meeting in person, the Board of Select is now meeting in person. And I think that we miss a lot by not meeting in person. One of the things that has concerned me and continues to concern me is that normally when we had our meetings, we had members of the public who used to like to come to them. And the Zoom meeting has foreclosed this kind of thing. And I think that one of the strengths of our planning board is the fact that we've always been very welcoming and let people come and make comments on things. And I think the Zoom meeting has not accomplished that in the same way. I think it's very difficult. People have felt it's hard for people to talk over Zoom, make comments about things. And I would like to see us starting to go back in June to meet in person.
Yeah. Anyone care to comment on that?
Mark, my only comment is I'm returning on Friday and I'm not vaccinated yet, but I will probably get vaccinated on Saturday. But if everyone else is, I'm okay with that. I would just be wearing a mask still until I get my second shot.
I don't really want everybody to have to comment on their vaccination status or lack thereof. I think that's, private. I agree with Hazel. We need to get back in person. I think we can probably do a Zoom meeting next week, and then, I'd like to start maybe the second meeting in June.
That's
do a regular meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm 1 shot away from being fully vaccinated, and I don't mind sharing that. But I just don't feel like it's necessarily our business what everybody's vaccination status is. So why don't we just plan on meeting by Zoom next week and then shoot for the second meeting in June to go back to the Forbes building, if everybody's good with that. Please speak up if you have an objection. I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. All right. And if you don't feel like speaking up here, please send me a private message, email or anything, and we can see what we can do. Okay. All right. Any other business? Jim Robbins, anything else?
No, just I will reach out to the applicant at 4400 Computer Drive to make sure that they can provide some kind of an outdoor mock-up and ask them to look at that date, the 8th of June. And I will also reach out to the applicant about the time for a work session for 1400 West Park Drive.
Okay, great. All right, if there's no other business, then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Hazel seconded. All those in favor, we'll do a roll call. Hazel Nurse,
yes.
Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Peter Bouchard,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to adjourn the meeting. Have a great night, everybody. And we'll
Take
see you.
care.
Have a great long weekend and safe travels, Jim Ball, and we'll see you all next
Safe
week.
travels, Jim.
Right.
Chris,
Thank you, everybody.
for everything.
Days.
See
Bye-bye.
you soon.
Night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.